Hi, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Camille.
We're research specialists at the Family History Library, and we're here to talk to you about how you can use a DNA test to find an unknown ancestor. Now, there's a lot of different types of tests out there. Camille, would you mind talking us through the top three types?
Sure. First, we have Y-DNA. Now, this is going to be following your direct paternal line or your father's 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 line. And this can go back hundreds of years because it changes very slowly over time, typically. And only men can test for this one. So if you're interested in following that paternal line, you'll have to find a brother or a cousin or a father or someone else to test for you who's a man. There's also mitochondrial DNA testing, which is to follow your direct maternal line or your mother's 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 line. And this one is similar to the Y-DNA in that it changes very slowly. So again, you can connect with people who connect with you at a kind of distant level, going back hundreds of years. And again, anyone can test with this one. So if you're a man, a woman, it doesn't matter. Anyone can do it. Then there's also the autosomal testing, which is the most popular, and it's also the least expensive option. Now, this one is a little bit different than the other two in that it can cover DNA that you've inherited from any one of your ancestral lines, not just your direct maternal or direct paternal lines. So this is very helpful when trying to build out other parts of your tree. Now, keep in mind, though, that this only goes back approximately 4 to 6 generations due to inheritance patterns. Lauren, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Each of us inherit 50% of our DNA from our father and 50% from our mother. And our parents have both inherited 50% of their DNA from each of their grandparents, which means that I have approximately 25% of each of my grandparents' DNA inside of me. Of course, that also means that I'm missing out on 75% of their DNA. And so the further back I go, the less DNA of an individual person I have that I'm able to use to compare to other descendants to break through brick walls. And so that's why Camille said you can only go back about 4 and 5 generations, because after that, the amount of DNA that I have from that ancestor is so small, it's really hard to make any sort of firm conclusions about my relationships with other people. But as long as we're staying in that Goldilocks window, there is a way that we can test in order to find unknown ancestors. And remember, if you're looking for someone who's outside of that window for you, think about your grandparents, think about your uncles and aunts or great uncles and aunts, because if someone's 8 generations away from me, they're only 6 generations away from my grandma. And so instead of taking an autosomal DNA test myself, I should test my grandma, because it puts us a lot closer to that unknown relative and allows us to focus in on matches from them. So Camille, exactly how, big picture, can we use autosomal DNA to identify an unknown ancestor?
Sure. So in each of the DNA testing companies, you will get a list of matches. So these are people who've also tested with the same company, and you've been compared against each of them, and you'll only get the match list for those that you actually share DNA with. So this is helpful when you're looking for specific ancestors, because you can do a thing called clustering in your match list.
So clustering is exactly what it sounds like. You're going through all of your matches, and depending on where they come from on your family tree, you put them into little clusters. And this is something that you can do pretty simply by looking at your shared matches. And I'm going to show you an example. So this is my match list on MyHeritage, one of the companies where you can do autosomal DNA testing. And you can see I have gone pretty far down my match list, because in this case, let's say I want to try to find an unknown great-great-grandparent on my mother's line. Everyone that I'm matching as a close relative or maybe like a first cousin is only matching me probably through a grandparent or a great-grandparent. In order to get further back, I'm going to go into this thing where the company is estimating that we're, in this case, 3rd to 5th cousins. And let's say that when I look at match 22, who already has a family tree that they've uploaded, which has information on them, their parents, and all of their ancestors, the company's actually already compared it and found out that we're related. And in this case, it found out that we're related through that ancestor who I want to know where they were born and who their parents were. I'm descended from one of their children, she's descended from another child. And this is great because I know that we both share the DNA of that ancestor who I want to find more information about. So what I can do is under the information for this match, which once again, every company has this shared matches in common with shared family feature, I can look at all of the people who share DNA with me and with this match. And once again, I'm going to skip my parents, I'm going to skip my first cousins, and I'm going to go down till I see people who I have no idea how they're related to me, but I know that these people have been clustered so that all of them are at least related to me through this person who I want to know more about. Now, a lot of you aren't going to have this magical moment where you find someone who's related to you exactly through that person you want to learn more about. But what you can do is start by finding someone, maybe a first cousin who you know. For me, I'm trying to find someone on my mom's side. So find a first cousin who's related to you on your mom's side, and then cluster all of your shared matches. So now you have everyone that's from your mom's side. And then find someone who's related along that line we're going to, and cluster all the shared matches into a different list. And that way you can sort of, by cutting in half and cutting in half and cutting in half, find that cluster of people who you believe are all related through that ancestor you want to know more about.
So that's right. And sometimes our matches don't have trees. So in Lauren's example, thank goodness that one match had a really great tree and it matched up really well with Lauren's tree, so they knew that they were related in that way. Sometimes we don't have a family tree for those people in our match list, or even in our little cluster that we've identified that we want to look at. So in that case, we'll have to just do traditional genealogy research with our regular documents to build out their tree. And eventually, we'll hopefully be able to find out how each of the people in the cluster matches each other, and eventually then to us.
And you've done that a couple times, and I believe you have an example of one of the times where you've been able to find it on an ancestor through building out those match trees. Is that right?
I do. Let me
Please
show you. Okay, so here's an example of one of our clusters. So at the bottom of this chart, you can see matches A through H, okay? And they're all highlighted in red because these are the people from our matched list. Now, when we have our clusters, not everyone will have a tree, but hopefully a few of them will have at least small trees that you can build on to have a foundation for your little cluster. So let's say someone in this little match group had a small family tree, and as you're building out, you suddenly find, that, oh, I see that these two also had a small tree, and you built that out, and you find out that they're all descended from Teresa. That's excellent. That's a great place to start. Then you can keep building and building and building, and of course, not just building back, but building the tree down in time, so more to the present, because of course your testers are going to be living people, so you have to build the tree down to the present as well. So eventually you'll be able to see that your little cluster here they're all descended from this Wilhelm and Catherine. Now this is really important because this means that you too, as a DNA match to these people, are also somehow related to Wilhelm and Catherine. Now we don't know yet if Wilhelm and Catherine are your direct ancestors. It depends on how much DNA you're sharing, but it could be that Wilhelm or Catherine's sibling is your ancestor, or something like that.
Yeah, and so as you continue to build out this clusters tree and comparing it to your tree, eventually one day you'll be able to get them to intersect.
That's right.
That's awesome. Now remember, there are limitations to this. The further back in time you go, the harder it will be to use DNA to solve problems. Also, many of the DNA testing companies have databases that are very strongly American filled. And so if you're looking for a problem out of Europe, you won't have as many matches who directly descend from those people. There are ways to get around that. We've already talked about testing your older relatives. Another great idea is to test at as many companies as you can. Many companies allow you to upload DNA tests to their websites. So if you've already tested at one company, check out the other major ones to see if for a small fee you can transfer your DNA there.
And there's so many other resources out there for things we haven't talked about and things we've only covered a little bit here, for clustering and using other tools and resources to identify where your DNA matches can fit, and doing traditional genealogy as well. So go check out the other videos here at RootsTech Connect. Thanks for watching.